Try and guess what's wrong with the spawn points in this map. Go on, have a guess. What do you think's the matter with it? Can't get it? Well, Gaijin certainly haven't. If you still haven't got it, I'll tell you. The red team have 2 spawn points that are very far apart. The blue team have 2 spawn points that are right next to each other. Now, why is this a problem? Well, this map in particular, it's not the only map like it, but there are very good flanking opportunities around either side. Now, let's say it's the Germans in red and the Russians in blue. The Germans can flank around the north, and they can hide in the hills and the trees and the bushes and whatever, and start sniping into the spawn. Now, the Russian players think, oh crap, I'm going to have to spawn somewhere else because this one's been overrun. Let me choose this other spawn. Oh wait, it's 100 yards away from the other one. And that's it. You can't escape. Unlike the red team, if the eastern spawn point to the east of the town in the right hand corner in Echo 10 gets overrun, oh crap, we're going to have to spawn in India 5. But the blue team are screwed. There's nothing you can do. Because both spawn points are facing the same way. Both spawn points are within yards of each other. It's basically one spawn point. Now imagine in a game like Call of Duty, where no matter what happened in the game, no matter where the enemy team was spawning, you could only spawn in one place. Imagine what would happen. Eventually you'd have the entire enemy team in a circle around your spawn just waiting for you to appear. Now, spawn protection almost helps, but that lasts, what, a maximum of 10-15 seconds? And I think you automatically lose it as soon as you fire. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. So even if the spawn protection saves you and you get off a shot, well then you're still screwed, because there's going to be more enemies hiding in the forests and the bushes and behind hills, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's not just spawn placement, it's the entirety of Gaijin's map design, at least in terms of simulator. There's a few exceptions. Kursk is the main one that comes to mind. Generally the larger maps are less annoying to play in sim, and to a lesser extent realistic. But I was playing on Carpathians the other day, in Simulator, and it's a nice map. I like the layout of it. And it's a good map in Arcade, for example, where enemies have name tags. It's a bit more forgiving on the player if you make a mistake, but in Sim, you can't make a mistake. At least not a big one, because that'll be the end of your game. And in Sim, in this game in Carpathians, I was playing in the Charioteer. I think it's called the Charioteer. The Tier 4 tank destroyer. I was playing it. The tank doesn't matter. The point is, we got off to a bad start. There was a bit of a snowball effect as we began to lose more and more tanks, and they pushed further and further. But even before they had crossed the map, a couple of their tanks had snuck round the sides and were hiding in between our 2 spawn points. And there was no way of telling they were there unless you turned around and you scanned really intensely into the trees and the shadows and the bushes to see if there was anything there. Now, of course, this was our team's spawn point. I wasn't expecting anyone to be there. Although playing War Thunder, I probably should have been a bit more on my toes, because it's a bit of a free-for-all when it comes to spawning and spawn killing and spawn camping and whatever else. And there was an enemy tank hiding in the bushes behind me when I spawned in, and I turned to go around, take the flank and deal with the enemies on the flank, and I got shot from behind. Second shot, I still didn't know where it was coming from. I thought it was someone ahead of me, waiting for me to turn the corner. Third shot, I was on fire. I didn't have fire extinguisher, so I couldn't put it out. Turned around and saw one of our anti-air guns shooting into the trees just behind our spawn. Sorry, not behind our spawn, in between our 2 spawn points, which, again, were only about 200 meters apart. Not quite as bad as this map, but almost as bad. And yeah, the enemy can so easily get into your spawn. I mean, in simulator battles where tanks are much harder to spot, it's not that difficult to get across the map if you play carefully and your tank isn't covered in bright decals and the enemy happens to neglect a certain part of the map where you can sneak from one half to the other. And that is terrible map design. I mean, Gaijin, what are you thinking? This is a big budget game. It's got quite a large team by now, I'd imagine. Think about your simulator players. Think about your realistic players. At least in ground forces. I don't know how bad it is in planes, but spawn points aren't really a serious problem, I would think, in planes. But there's this really disappointing trend where Gaijin are trying to turn War Thunder into a primarily arcade-style game because they think that's where the money is and that's where most of the players are, and they don't give a damn about anyone that plays simulator. Well, maybe realistic, because that's not quite as extreme, shall we say, as the simulator style compared to arcade. Simulator mode has been stuck in this placeholder event style for far too long, and it just looks like they don't care. They don't care what happens in sim. These spawns, it wouldn't be as bad in arcade. I mean, it would still be crap, but at least in arcade you can see where enemies are hiding behind your spawn because they got bright red letters above their name and whatever else. But arcade-style gameplay isn't what I joined War Thunder for, and unfortunately that seems to be the only thing they're interested in developing, at least in any major, meaningful way. So it's a real disappointment. I do play simulator tanks primarily, and eventually something like this comes up. I mean, I can just happily play the game for a few, well, not quite a few hours, maybe an hour, and sort of let all the mistakes slide. But every now and again, something like this comes to my attention, and I'm reminded of why I play this game less and less these days. Please, Gaijin, don't throw this brilliant game away. You're wasting this great opportunity to make such an incredible simulator-style game that's not so complicated like DCS, where you need a 400-page manual. Or Steel Beasts, or whatever it's called, where like you have to deal with the entirety of the interior of the vehicle with all the gauges and the valves and the switches and the electronics. It's not extreme lifelike simulation, but it's a good form of simulation that mixes sort of casual, fun gameplay with a bit of a more serious, in-depth atmospheric element. And to me, it seems like they don't care about that. They just care about arcade. They want to compete with World of Tanks and Armoured Warfare. They don't want to make their own game. They want to try and steal customers from the opposition. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's not what Gaijin are trying to do, but that certainly seems like it. And that's a real shame. Now, I could continue ranting. Something else on my mind is, prioritising queue times over quality of gameplay, and that just... God. Why are queue times so important to them? Is it because they're terrified that people will get bored and go and spend their money somewhere else? Do they not realise that there are so many people out there that would prefer to wait an extra 30 seconds, 1 minute, maybe even 2 minutes for a good balanced game, rather than having, all these 7.3 and 7.7 tanks clogging up lower tier matches? Get it together, Gaijin, please. I'm on the point of quitting altogether. I mean, I know I'll probably come back every now and again just to see if anything's changed, like with World of Tanks. That's the situation I've been in with World of Tanks for quite some time now. Where I just come back. I used to play it almost religiously, like a couple hours daily at least, and now I don't care for it at all. And I'm worried that that's what War Thunder is going to turn into for me. It all seemed so bright and happy and cheerful when it came to open beta. But ground forces, if you're not playing arcade, then Gaijin isn't really interested in what you think. I stand to be corrected. If things change, then I will revoke the things I've said about Gaijin not caring about simulated ground forces players. But come on. Event-style game mode for, nearly 2 years now. It's like they don't even know they have a simulator mode. Maybe they do know it's there, but that's not where the money is. I'll let you decide on that. Thanks for listening. This has been Reach for the Sky.